Stan Lee, the man who created the Avengers.
If you have an idea that you genuinely think is good, don't let some idiot talk you out of it.
Stan Lee was an American comic book writer, editor, publisher, and producer. He rose through the ranks of a family-run business to become Marvel Comics' primary creative leader for 2 decades, leading its expansion from a small division of a publishing house to a multimedia corporation that dominated the comics industry. Lee was raised in a Jewish household in Manhattan, New York City. His father, trained as a dress cutter, worked only sporadically after the Great Depression. He said in 2006 that as a child he was influenced by books and movies, particularly those with Errol Flynn playing heroic roles. Lee enjoyed writing and entertained dreams of writing the great American novel one day. He said that in his youth he worked such part-time jobs as writing obituaries for a news service and delivering sandwiches to offices. At 15, Lee entered a high school essay competition sponsored by the New York Herald Tribune. Lee claimed to have won the prize for 3 straight weeks, goading the newspaper to write him and ask him to let someone else win. The paper suggested he look into writing professionally, which Lee claimed probably changed my life. With the help of his uncle, Lee became an assistant in 1939 at the New Comics division of pulp magazine publisher Martin Goodman's company. By the 1960s, it would evolve into Marvel Comics. When the regular writer left in 1941, following a dispute with the publisher, the 30-year-old Goodman installed Lee, just under 19 years old, as interim editor. The youngster showed a knack for the business that led him to remain as the comic book division's editor-in-chief, as well as art director for much of that time, until 1972, when he would succeed Goodman as publisher. In the mid-1950s, by which time the company was now generally known as Atlas Comics, Lee wrote stories in a variety of genres including romance, westerns, humor, science fiction, medieval adventure, horror and suspense. In the late 1950s, DC Comics editor Julius Schwartz revived the superhero archetype and experienced a significant success with its updated version of The Flash, and later with Super Team the Justice League of America. In response, publisher Martin Goodman assigned Lee to come up with a new superhero team. Lee's wife suggested that he experiment with stories he preferred, since he was planning on changing careers and had nothing to lose. Lee acted on that advice, giving his superheroes a flawed humanity, a change from the ideal archetypes that were typically written for preteens. Before this, most superheroes were idealistically perfect people with no serious, lasting problems. Lee introduced complex, naturalistic characters who could have bad tempers, fits of melancholy, and vanity. They bickered amongst themselves, worried about paying their bills and impressing girlfriends, got bored or were even sometimes physically ill. The first superheroes Lee and artist Jack Kirby created together were the Fantastic Four. The team's immediate popularity led Lee and Marvel's illustrators to produce a cavalcade of new titles. Again working with Kirby, Lee co-created the Hulk, Thor, Iron Man, and the X-Men, and with Steve Ditko, Lee co-created Doctor Strange and Marvel's most successful character, Spider-Man, all of whom lived in a thoroughly shared universe. Lee and Kirby gathered several of their newly created characters together into the team titled The Avengers. After the brilliance of DC Comics' reinvention of the superhero, in the late 1950s and early 1960s, it had run into a creative drought by the decade's end. There was a new audience for comics now, and it wasn't just the little kids that traditionally had read the books. Marvel was pioneering new methods of comics storytelling and characterization, addressing more serious themes, and in the process keeping and attracting readers in their teens and beyond. Lee remarked that his goal was for fans to think of the comics creators as friends. Lee became a figurehead and public face for Marvel Comics. He made appearances at comic book conventions around America, lecturing at colleges and participating in panel discussions. He moved to California in 1981 to develop Marvel's TV and movie properties. He was an executive producer for, and made cameo appearances in Marvel film adaptations and other movies. Lee stepped away from regular duties at Marvel in the 1990s, though he continued to receive an annual salary of $1 million as chairman emeritus. Following the success of X-Men and Spider-Man film series, Lee sued Marvel in 2002, claiming that the company was failing to pay his share of the profits from movies featuring the characters he had co-created. Lee and the company settled in 2005 for an undisclosed 7-figure amount. Lee died in November 2018, 6 weeks before his 96th birthday in Los Angeles, California. The superheroes he created are immortalized in the Avengers film series, which have grossed around $20 billion worldwide.
Came to me And he said, Stan, I want you to come up with another superhero. So I said, okay, went home, and when my publisher...
Guess it had a little more kick than he was looking for.
Wow.